On July 11, 2019, I took a trip over to Los Angeles, California for about a week. Having never gone past Texas, I was eager to finally see what the West Coast had to offer. That's Freddy. That's Malcom. They pulled up to LA. But with most of my trips, it started with a long flight. From LaGuardia Airport in New York City, we flew to Dallas, Texas, had an hour and a half layover, then finally touched down in LAX around 2:30. In hindsight, renting a car would have made much more sense, but luckily, Ubers in LA were cheap. From LAX, we arrived at our first Airbnb.
Out of sight. Owned by Islands and Sellers.
The train to 7th Street Metro Center in downtown LA is now arriving.
Being city kids, we got the idea to try out the LA Metro for ourselves. The trains were just that, trains. They did a good job of getting us over to Santa Monica. Now, I'm not one for boardwalks or piers. I've barely been to Coney Island back in New York. But Santa Monica was a bit different. It was a mix of Times Square and Six Flags on a boardwalk. And then that sunset. Luckily for us, there was a shopping district by the mall where they filmed Terminator 2 to keep us busy during the night. So our main reason for flying across the country was for this particular concert. In order to understand why we would possibly do that for a show, you gotta understand something about the band playing. These guys are an amazing and pretty well-known hardcore band, but back in 2015, the band's tour bus crashed into an 18-wheeler truck.
The driver of a tour bus is dead after a head-on crash with an 18-wheeler. The band, The Ghost Inside, was traveling on that bus in El Paso after a performance in Lubbock. 10 passengers on that bus, including members of the band, were hospitalized.
Thankfully, the band lived but suffered serious injuries, with the drummer having to have his leg amputated.
The crash happened in El Paso, Texas, about 8 miles outside of the border of, I believe, Arizona and Texas. We were all sleeping. So I woke up in the debris.
After years and years of recovery, the fans were eager to see the band make a comeback. There were some close calls, but they finally announced a one-night and one-night only show. They were playing a comeback show in LA. And not to mention, these are the guys who played at my very first concert. Clearly, I was hyped. It was by far the best show I've been to in my life and totally worth the cross-country trip. Venice Beach was pretty nice. We did get Coney Island vibes though. We got the chance to view a basketball game and check out the skate park. sucks that I didn't get much footage because my camera battery died as we were walking down the path to Santa Monica and checking out the other shops. It was also really cloudy that day, so let's just move on. So we made plans to stay at this particular Airbnb for the whole trip, but it was taken the weekend before. This house was definitely higher living than any of us were accustomed to. There were 3 rooms, a living room, kitchen, front porch, and a whole backyard with a hot tub.
Take this from me. Yo, bro. I don't belong here.
Well said, Freddy. For now, this was our home away from home. And the other perk, it was 2 blocks away from Hollywood Boulevard. Forget what I said about Santa Monica. Hollywood Boulevard was our version of Times Square, so we went full tourist. Hollywood Boulevard had a tourist-centered vibe, but as a first-comer, I did not mind. The famous Chinese theater. Going to Hollywood was honestly on my bucket list. 100% of the top things I needed to do before I died. Even though it was super touristy, it was still cool just knowing that a ton of movies and shows were filmed there.
If you want respect, you gotta earn it. You damn right.
This hike up Mount Lee was a win and a loss at the same time. The view was an epic win. Plus, the Griffin Observatory was beautiful. To begin to explain the loss, I first got to explain that Freddy thought it would be a good idea to do a hike without eating breakfast or lunch first, and we didn't pack much water. So after deciding to climb up the trail, I got dehydrated halfway through. It wasn't fun collapsing halfway, but I regret nothing. Another huge thing on my bucket list was going to a Universal Studios location. Before we went into the park, Freddy and I had to walk through the iconic City Walk. Even though City Walk was a bunch of stores and restaurants, it actually got me pretty excited to enter into the park. Knowing that I would be getting on rides, I was too afraid to bring my Canon 80D, so all the footage from this day was taken on my phone. I'm not too sure what it is, but there's something about amusement parks, and especially the scenery at Universal Studios, that gets me hyped. So our first attraction was the Waterworld Stunt Show. Now, I know that the movie may suck, but this stunt show is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. The stunts, live actors, and the story kept my eyes glued to what was happening the entire time. Just wait, this is the best part. That seaplane prop is the most iconic and well-known piece of the entire show. There was a whole Springfield section. Even though I haven't seen much of the show, seeing the recreation of the city with the characters was pretty neat.
Alright, to the left.
The one memory I think I do have when I was younger was seeing this particular dinosaur and actually thinking it was real. This was the backlot tour and was by far the best attraction we've been on. I also took the most footage here because I was too scared to bust out my phone on any other rides. I really should have brought my GoPro. The sunset at Universal was just as nice as it was at Santa Monica. We headed back to the City Walk to get to our Uber. The neon lights looked even better at night. A good way to end a good day. So came to the end of our time in LA. From LAX to Universal Studios Hollywood. There were a couple other things that we did that I didn't film for, but these were the bulk of our trip. It was definitely sad to leave because the West Coast did not disappoint. I got to see some iconic landmarks, got to see one of my favorite bands make a comeback, and experience one of the coolest theme parks. It definitely wouldn't have been the same without my boys Freddy and Malcom there along for the ride. I never thought that I would actually cross the country with good friends. Do I ever see myself moving to LA? Probably not, but of course I'll be back for another visit. Until next time, I finally get to say, I went to LA. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching to the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. This project was about 2 years in the works. I meant to start it as soon as I got back, but then I had to put it on hold because of school. And then a year later, I meant to come back to it, and then I had to stop because other projects got in the way. But truth be told, I don't think the video would have came out as well without those 2 years of editing experience. So I am really glad that I took my time in completing the project. Huge thanks to Freddy, Malcom, and Kaleem for coming along for the trip and making it that much more enjoyable. If you guys need help in editing or shooting your travel videos, feel free to hit me up, email down below. Be sure to follow all of our social media pages and subscribe for new content. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you later.